Sky Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio.
First Ray, welcome to the show, dear.
Hey, Duke.
It's great to have you on finally. We've been trying so long and hard
I
to get you
know.
on
Don't touch anything.
here. Yeah, no kidding. You neither. We're probably both destructos on equipment. As soon as we touch it, it blows up. I know that's how it works for me most of the time. Well, anyway, yeah, just super happy to have you on the show here finally. As a lot of you know, she has her own channel, BAMA BF, where she documents some of the interesting stuff that happens when she walks around and does nature walks. And one of your recent videos, I really loved it because you just took a nature walk and it's about like 28 minutes and you're trotting around and filming everything and it's all pretty and the birds are singing. And in the last 2 minutes, there's like heavy metal music and tons of pictures of Bigfoot that were in the video in the last 28 minutes that everybody missed.
I love
love your
nature.
videos.
Yeah, it's an area I know they frequent, and I know they're back there, so I try to admire from afar. I don't like getting close up to them if I can help it.
It sounds to me like they like to get closer to you than you like to get to them.
Yep.
Because you get like uncomfortably close sometimes.
They'll sneak up on you, that's for sure. But I don't know where to start. I'm from Florida originally, Fort Walton Beach and Destin. I moved up here in 1980. I'll just try to get to here. Let's see. I was living in another place. I had a nice little place, and my mother came up in '99, and I needed a bigger place. So before I had bought the other place, I was out. I thought I would ride around out in the country because I wanted to be out of town. I don't like living in town. And I happened to see this place and I remembered it. And it had been like 5 years, and I thought, well, surely no, somebody bought it by now. And I couldn't quite remember where it was, but I rode around until I finally found it. And lo and behold, it was still for sale. So I don't know how long this place sat empty. And I called the realtor, and I made an extremely low offer on it. I mean, I thought, yeah, they're just going to laugh that off. The very next morning, the realtor called me, and they had accepted my offer on the house. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this house? And I really wanted to get inside and see it. So he met me out here that afternoon. And it's an old house. It was built in '65. Not much has been done to it other than this room was added on. This used to be the garage. And little did I know it had history. The people that built it both passed away. I don't know if they passed away here or somewhere else, but their daughter, who had possession of it, lived in the lot next door in a trailer, and she had cancer. And she passed away 6 months after we moved in the trailer. So, a lot of things happened here. A lot of it was paranormal. It didn't start out Bigfoot. I've had a lot of paranormal things go on, and it kind of built up. And my first encounter wasn't with a Bigfoot. It was with a Dogman, but
Wow.
it wasn't here. It was at a little place actually in town. I was on the bypass, and it's about 7 miles in, and the north and east side of the town is kind of small, is kind of built up. And then the south and the west side is very rural. And they had just mowed down cut down a bunch of trees and all on the south side. And there was a little creek that ran through there. And I used to ride around with my dog, take my dog, you know, walking, and he loved to get out and ride in the car. And I thought, well, I've got some errands to run, so I'll just take him and run some errands, and then we'll go find somewhere to walk. They had put an easement in because they were going to build there. They were building a movie theater. So I thought, well, I'll just park down there on that easement and walk him out there where they had cut all the trees, and it was, I don't know how many acres they cleared out there, like 20. And there's a lake, a small pond back there. They actually made a country music video back there, and I'm not going to say which one because I don't think they want to be associated with it. But I had walked down, I had parked down at the east end, and I had walked halfway up toward the west. I went down off the easement road down into the field there, and I cut over east, and then I cut back to the west, and then I went all the way around. There's a little creek that horseshoes there. And, you know, no problem. There's a little trail that crosses that creek, and I kind of got a weird feeling when I was down there. And my dog was crying a little bit, you know. So anyway, I come back up out of the field, and I came out where I went in, halfway. I don't know how many yards long this road is, probably 200 yards. So I was about 100 yards from where my truck was. And I'm walking down this easement road, and I look up, and it's going to sound weird, but there's this big white, to me it looked like a face. And it was, at first I thought it was something caught in the trees, and it was billboard size. And it wasn't white and fuzzy. Gris, stop. It was solid white. It was solid. There was no glare or anything to it. And I don't know if I was looking at windows or eyes, but this thing was solid white, and it had what looked like two black eyes, and it looked really mad. And I was looking at it, and my mind, I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I'm still walking toward it. And I knew if I took my eye off of it, it was going to disappear. But in my head, I'm thinking of everything that it could possibly be. Billboard? No, there's no billboard there. You know, I've been here a few times. I have been there. And I'm thinking, well, it's maybe a big piece of plastic that got caught in a tree. And it was real windy that day. It was February the 17th. I still remember, about 2 o'clock. I still remember exactly when. And the wind was blowing really hard. And the wind was coming from behind me, blowing toward it. But the trees and the bushes and all were, you know, just really getting whipped around. This thing wasn't moving. It was stationary. And I'm looking at it the whole time I'm walking toward it, and it just looks angry. You know, it looked like a face, just eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a big round white face. And as I get toward the end, and I kind of get parallel to my truck, my dog pulled to go to the truck. And I started to look at him, and I said no, because I wanted to see what this thing was. And right when I did that, I thought, uh-oh, I took my eye off of it. And so I looked back, and sure enough, it was gone. And so I pulled my dog and I said, "Come on, I want to walk over here and look." And at where the pavement ends, there's only like a 3-foot shelf of dirt, and it's covered with blackberry bushes and tall grass, but there was just one little clear spot there. And I thought, well, I'm gonna stand over here and look. And now this whole time, Duke, I had a camera hanging on my wrist, little pocket
Never even
Samsung.
thought of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about taking a picture of it. It just, because I was trying to figure out what it was, and I didn't feel afraid or anything. But I get to that edge, and it drops off probably. It's probably a 30-foot drop off. It goes down to the little creek, but you can't see the creek because the bush, there's a type of tree, and I can't remember the type of tree it is. They get pretty tall. They get like 9-10 feet tall. And then you've got a bunch of little oak saplings and stuff shooting up out of that. But I'm standing there and I'm looking. I just start scanning the tree line because it was up. Okay, when it drops down 30 feet, it kind of levels off and the creek's down in there. And then there's a little shelf on the other side, and then it goes up a hill at about a 45-degree angle. I'm just guessing. And it goes up about maybe 60 feet. And then there's the trees. And so I'm scanning the top of the hill and the tree line, looking for this thing, and I don't see it. And I'm looking way off. I look way off toward the back, and I don't see anything. And I'm coming back toward where it was, and something in my peripheral on my left catches my attention. I see movement, and it's dark. It's something dark. And when I looked over, I saw the back. It looked like the back of a dog's head. It was black, and it was real wide. And it's coming up out of that bush, going up that hill. But just as the head comes out, it stopped. And when I looked at it, it had turned, and I didn't even see it turned. It turned so fast, I didn't see it turn. But now we're standing there looking at each other, and I can't tell if it's looking at me or if it's looking at my dog. Grizzly started to whine, and he does that a lot. He likes to go. If you stop, he'll stand there a minute, but then he'll start to whine because he wants to go. But he started to whine, and I thought, well, I know he didn't scent me because the wind. Well, Grizzly didn't scent the dog, because if he did, he would have went nuts. Grizzly's really dog aggressive. But this thing scented us, and because the wind was blowing right in his direction, that's probably why he came up out of the bush. So I'm standing there looking at it, and then it gets weird. He kind of started to fade out, and he didn't completely disappear. But I thought, is he fading out, or is he turning green? Because it looked the same color as the bush around it, but I could still see it. And I couldn't see eye color. The eyes just looked black. And then I remembered I had my camera. So I thought I better take a picture before it disappears. So I pulled my camera up and I turned it on and I videoed it. And just, for a few seconds. And I put the camera up, and then I put the camera down, and I started thinking, that thing is huge, and if it starts to come over here, I can't protect myself and I can't protect my dog. So I thought, well, I need to put Grizz in the truck before Grizz spots him, because so far Grizz hadn't seen him yet. So I turned around and I just walked off, and my truck is probably 20, 25 feet away from me. So I'll walk all the way over to the truck and I put Grizz in. And then I get in and I lock my door and I'm looking back to see if I can see it. And it's gone, you know, I can't see where it was sitting. So I cranked my truck up and I backed up, and then I turned around and I went all the way down to the other end and pulled out, because you can come in at either end. And there's a red light at each end, and I'm sitting there waiting for the light to turn, and I'm like, what in the hell did I just see? You know?
Yeah.
I have no idea what it was. It wasn't long after that. I'd say maybe 2 days, if that. I was out walking around the backyard, and I'm walking down the side, the west side of my property, there at the bush, and I get up even with this big bush of Yopon, and I just kind of glanced up, and I see this black dog head sticking up out of the bush, and it's about 7 foot up there. All I can see is would have been the right ear and the top of its head. I saw the top of its head and the right ear. I couldn't see the face or the muzzle, and it kind of jolted me, but I kept walking, and I just walked past it. And I thought, okay, I wonder if that's the one I saw the other day at that creek. And I hadn't seen a Bigfoot at that time. I have had a lot of weird things that were going on here. Between that and, you know, my health was, I was having a lot of problems with my health. My mother was she would have nightmares and sleep paralysis. She was having sleep paralysis. My dog, that female German Shepherd I had, she come in and woke me up one night, and she would come to my bed and whine, and then she would go into the hall. And if you go into the hall out of my bedroom door, to the left was my mother's room. It's my son's room now. My mother moved down South Florida. And my dog kept going back and forth and whining. And so I got up, and her door was closed. And I stood there at her door, and I could hear her making this weird noise. It was like she couldn't talk. You know, she was, I call it, she's going to kill me. I called it her Tarzan call. She was going, you know. And so I cracked the door open, and I said, Mama. And she didn't answer me. And so I pushed the door open, and I walked toward her bed, and I kind of said it a lot louder. I was like, Mama. And she finally woke up, and she was like, yes. And I was like, what's wrong? You were making a weird noise. And she said, yeah, I'm glad you woke me up. I was having a bad dream. But she told me later that it was like sleep paralysis. And a lot of weird things like that went on in the house. She was making her bed one morning, and she said it sounded like a woman was standing on the other side of my bed and said, "Well, good morning." She said, just as clear as day, a woman told me, "Well, good morning." And I was like, yeah, oh, okay, and back then I was that kind of person, I would brush it off, I'd say, okay, I didn't I believed in ghosts, but I didn't think anything of it. And then we started getting bad smells in the house. You could walk in and it would just smell. I can't describe the smell. It was old, bad smell. It just smelled old. I can't describe how it didn't smell like anything that I can think of. But it would be there, and then, I would walk around and try to find it. I couldn't find it, and then it would just go away.
I could be way off base here, but I'm starting to get the weird feeling that your house might be haunted.
Yeah, a little bit. It was a little bit. There's a lot of weird things that happen here I could tell you about, but we won't. I'll try not to go into much of it. I know Mama had dreams. She had one of her sitting on the front porch, and she said a big dog walked up to her, and it walked up on the porch, and when it got up on the porch, it turned into like this demon or something. I'm probably thinking Dogman. Now I think it might have been a Dogman. Because I've had a mess with me in my dreams. After a while, later on, my sister moved up here, and she moved into town, and she wanted Mama to move with her because Mama was going to the doctor a lot, and she liked being closer to town, because it takes a while to get to town here. And so she did. She moved to town, and she moved in with my sister. And I started noticing a lot of things. Orbs. I was having orbs. I walked up the stairs one day, and as I turned to go toward the kitchen, an orb just dropped. It was like it just come out of the ceiling and just shot down the hall. And I stopped, but then I was like, no, I didn't see that.
No, totally, no.
There's a lot of paranormal stuff, but I don't want to get too deep into it.
Well, we'll cover that on another show. We're
yeah.
The Bigfoot stuff on this one.
Okay, the Bigfoot. After the Dogman, I was seeing Cole. Cole, he was solid black, and he had this patch on his chest like a not an arrowhead, it's more like a spear. It's longer. And there was a gray one that was with him all the time. And
when was the first time you saw him?
The first time I saw, I saw the one at the bypass, and I think that was Smoke, the one that was followed Cole around. I think they followed me back here. And okay. The reason I say that is because I believe that they had young ones down there. And I got too close. Mm-hmm. But Cole was, I believe, younger than Smoke, because Cole was like 7 foot. And Smoke was bigger. I don't know how much bigger, but I want to say Cole was a she. I don't know if it was his mother or his sister or sibling or what, but to me, it felt like a female. I never seen her body. If I saw it, she was moving so fast I couldn't tell what it was.
Mm-hmm.
She did jump up and run in front of me one day, but me trying to get the camera on her, it's just, she was a blur. And I believe she's the one that made me sick. For some reason, Cole never did. He just had a fascination with me. He followed me around. It seemed like anywhere I went, he would show up, and I couldn't figure out how he was doing it. I could be 3 miles out on the county road somewhere and come around the corner, and he'd be standing there. I could have got a picture of him out in the open, standing like a statue. And something just told me not to take the picture. I don't know if I was being tested. I know that sounds crazy. I think it's crazy. But it was like, just don't take the picture. So I didn't, and I'm thinking in my head, what are you doing? Somebody's going to see you, a car come by. And I'm like, Cole, they're going to see you. And I'm trying to drive and stay in my lane. And I'm looking at him, and he's out in the middle of this huge pasture that was planted with ryegrass. And I don't know if you know what ryegrass is. They plant it in the winter to keep the fields from eroding. Mm-hmm. And it's super dark green, and it gets pretty tall, and it's really pretty. And he's standing out there, and the sun is just shining off his hair, and he's just standing there like, I see you and I know where you're at. That's kind of the feeling I got. And so I just kept going, and I wish now I would have took the picture, but who knows what would have happened if I did.
Yeah.
So,
your camera would have fried and you wouldn't have got the picture.
Yeah, I probably would have had a wreck or something. But it wasn't too long after meeting the Dogman. I started seeing these fuzzy heads sticking up out of the bush when I was outside. And I told my son, I said, I think I'm seeing big monkeys out in the bushes. And he kind of rolled his eyes and looked at me, and I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm seeing something out in the bushes, and I don't know what it is. And I knew about Bigfoot, but I didn't think I'd ever see one.
Yeah. But you do live kind of far from the Pacific Northwest, too. You don't expect Sasquatch to be running around in Alabama, generally.
No, and, I heard about boogers growing up. I remember my pawpaw. He started to tell us about some boogers that would come to the edge of the woods at the sawmill and start screaming, and then my grandmother cut him off. She was like, Calvin, don't tell those kids stuff like that. So it was my grandmother. She's the one that told me. We were out playing. We had been out in the woods playing and all, and we had come in, and we went over to our grandparents pretty often, and we were talking about playing in the woods or something. And I think my little brother, my little brother, and then I had a brother that was a year older than me. They were arguing because it had gotten dark, and my older brother, had to outrun my little brother. in the woods and kind of left him to get out, you know. And they were arguing about it. And my grandmother, just out of the blue for no reason, she said, don't be in the woods at night and don't ever whistle in the woods. And that just kind of, you know, I always remembered, you know, why would she say that? Yeah. Don't whistle in the woods. And I loved the woods. I mean, we grew up playing in the woods. There was 8 kids in my family, and, you know, we were poor. We didn't have toys like the neighbor did, you know, the neighbor kids. We played with theirs. But most of the time we spent just outside. The rule was you get up in the morning, you get dressed, you go outside, and you don't come in till I call you. So we spent a lot of time in the woods, a lot. And how we survived, I don't know. But back to the Bigfoot. Yeah, I could be sitting out in my yard and I would see a fuzzy head sticking up out of the bush. And it would move. It'd do like that, you know, or like that. And I was not sure what to do. You know, I didn't know what it was. Or sometimes I would see shadows. I'd look at it and then I'd look away, and in a few minutes I'd look back and it'd be like twice the size.
No.
And then I'd look away and then I'd look back and it'd only be it'd be shaped different. Mm-hmm. It would be like half the shadow there, and then it would go out. And then one day I was sitting there watching it, and I watched this big blob of a shadow in the bush. Half of it kind of went down and started moving across the ground. And I'm looking up at the sun thinking, okay, the sun's not moving that fast. That is something in the bush. There's something in the bush and it's moving.
Right.
And it was snaking through the bush, and I was like, how could it get through that? Because I don't know if you know what yopon is, but it comes up everywhere. I mean, it's just it grows in clumps, and it's just trees. And it was just nothing was moving. The bushes weren't moving, but this big shadow was snaking through these bush, snaking up toward me. So I thought, well, I'm going to go in and get my camera and just come out here and set my camera on the table. And so I'm sitting there, and it starts moving, and it snakes up, and then I see a fuzzy head pop up off toward the back. And the one in the middle was still sitting there. It was the shadow, the original big clump. So
there was more than one of them there.
Yeah, I counted 3, maybe 4. And the one that was snaking he was belly crawling through the bush, and there's a berm there. So he's kind of like on top of, but more on the side of the berm. Mm-hmm. And he messed up and picked his head up. And when he picked his head up, I saw his brow. And I said, I know what that is. That's when I realized what I was seeing. And it kind of scared me a little bit, but it froze there. He didn't move anymore. He stayed right there. And he was pretty good ways away from me. So I sat there maybe 2 more minutes. And then I got up and went in the house. And that's basically how my encounters go. They last like 2 or 3 minutes, if that long. That's a long one, 2 minutes. Because if I'm out there and I turn around and I notice them around me, I will usually get up and go in the house. And or if I'm walking and I walk past one, I wouldn't make eye contact. I'd see it, you know, as I'm coming toward it, I could see it, but I wouldn't look at it. I would just keep, you know, keep my eye on where I was going, where I'm heading. And that's just how I have looked at them. And I have looked them in the eye. And it's scary. There's a primal fear there, but they never made any attempt to scare me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were just sitting there. they just want to sit there and watch you, yeah. And I was like, okay, you know, I can handle that as long as they don't start growling or, you know, throwing stuff at me. So it wasn't too long. It was on a Thanksgiving day. I remember it. The first time I met Boss. And there's kind of a we kind of have a mental connection now. I don't do I've had the mind speak, but I've told them no, not to, because I don't want to mind speak with anything unless it's Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit. I don't want to talk to anything in my head.
Yeah. And
the times that they have done it, I would tell them to stop. You know, if you want to talk to me, but don't get in my head. Stay out of my head.
Yeah.
But I was standing out on the side one day, and I was taking some pictures. I had my camera, and I was just scanning the bush. And my son came out. It was Thanksgiving Day, and so I turned around and I was yelling at him, and I said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go over to Mama's." I said, "When you pick up," he has a daughter. I said, "When you pick her up, y'all come by there before you go home." And he was like, "Okay." And I was yelling pretty loud. And what I didn't know was the alpha female. I named her Cleo, and there's a reason why I named her Cleo. Actually, I started calling her Cleopatra, and I call her Cleo for short. But she has the lining of her eyes. She has a dark gray face. At certain angles, it looks black, and then at another angle, it would look light gray.
Mm-hmm.
But the lining of her eye is black. It looks like she's wearing eyeliner. So I named her Cleopatra. And I think she's the reason that I was protected from the rest of them. She even showed me empathy. I try not to get upset. I was on my front porch one day and I was feeling really bad. I have a lot of health problems. And she was over on the side watching me. And she started to coo like, oh, you know. Except she was, you know, I could hear her. She was loud. And she did it 3 or 4 times. It was like, oh, look, she don't feel good. And I sat there for a few minutes, and I knew it was Cleo. And so I I finally got up and walked back in the house. And I believe she is the one who talks to me in my head. Because I've told them not to do it, and I don't know if the others can, you know. I don't know if they're, because there's a lot of young ones in this group. There's 3 or 4 females, and they have young, and there's, I want to say 5 males, maybe more. And they're all different sizes, and they all look different. There's one. He's real young. I don't know how old he is. I think the first time I saw him, he was maybe 5.5 feet tall. But every time I walked outside, he would pop up and then pop back down. It was like, I had to see him. No, he wanted me to see it. He wanted me to know he was there. Mm. And I think he's the one that does a lot of the knocking on the house, because I've got one that knocks on that. He don't hit the house hard. It's just like a person knocking on a door.
Yeah.
And they'll knock on the house. But I caught him in a video doing it. I walked around, I went out the front, and instead of going over to the side where they are, I went to the other, and I'm coming around. As I come around, I've got the camera on, but I'm not paying attention to it. It's just in my hand. And because I was going to walk over to the table and sit it down on the table and just record the bush. But in that video, you can see him pop up out of the bush and then pop back down. And it's so funny. I've never posted that video because I was walking and I wasn't paying attention to the camera, and it's real shaky. And I don't know how to stabilize it. But if you watch it close, you can see him. And you can see him from like the waist up. He pops out and looks, and then he goes down. You can see his head, and then his head disappears. But
well, I'll take a shot at trying to stabilize it a little bit. We'll see if we can get a better version for people to look at.
Yeah, I've got a lot that I've never posted. I've got so many, because for like almost 2 years they were here, and I was out there all the time trying to get pictures of them. And I got taught, boss taught me not to point a camera at him. Mm-hmm. That first day I saw boss was that Thanksgiving day. I yelled at my son, and Cleo was there, and I scared her, and she was holding an infant. She had an infant with her. And her mouth was open like she was making a noise, but I couldn't hear anything. You know, I don't know if it was above or below the range that I could hear. But while I was standing there, the bush, these real tall bushes, parted. I didn't hear anything. The bush just parted, and boss from about just below his chest up, just standing there looking at me. And it shocked me. I was in awe. I was like, no, that's not real. You know, that's not, you know, that is not a Bigfoot.
Oh, yes, it is. I've seen the picture.
The only time he would come up here, him and the bigger males stayed off in that green belt back there in the back. And the only time boss would come up, or the males would come up, would be to get the juveniles and the females. Mm-hmm. And then but that bush parted, and boss was standing there, and I'm in shock, and I'm looking at him, and he starts to go sink down. It's a weird way he went down. It was almost like a forward squat. It's the only way I can describe it. He went down like on one leg or something. But when he did, I thought, oh crap. I didn't know if he was going to rush the bush or what he was going to do. So I walked up into the yard real quick. I had to go over a little berm to get up in the yard. I walked up that berm and I turned around and I looked, and he had leaned out and his head was cocked sideways, and he was looking at me, and he's black. But the way the light was hitting him, he was gray.
Mm-hmm.
His face at least. And that's all I could see was his face. And he was giving me this dirty look. I mean, it was a dirty look. It was just like, what in the hell are you doing? Look. And I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell. I'm sorry. I'm just going to go back in the house, and I'm sorry. That was the first time I had actually laid eyes on Boss, and he's big.
Yeah, I believe that. What do you guesstimate his height at?
I don't estimate its height because this ceiling right here is 9 foot, maybe a couple inches more. He's bigger. He'd have to bend over to get in here. And
if he could fit through the door.
Yeah, he'd probably come through the door. Part of it would be hanging off his shoulder.
Part of the door frame in the wall.
Yeah. But never real aggressive. They've never, well, I can't say they've never thrown anything at me. And this was just a few months ago. I was sitting on the front porch, and you're going to hear me say that a lot. Just if you ever talk to me, because I spend a lot of time on our front porch. I used to sit out back, but I don't anymore. Not as much.
Well, that's what they figured out, where you like to sit out back. That's why.
Yeah. But you know what? Once I moved to the front porch, they moved across the street there in that wood line, so they could watch me. Because
that could cause some potential problems for your soon-to-be neighbors across the street too.
Yeah, and they're building a house right there.
I know.
They just started building a house right there at that wood line. Yeah, I walked out the front door one day and pow! Perfect, crystal clear wood knock. And well, it wasn't during the day. It had just got dark. It was past dusk. It was almost dark. And as soon as I stepped out the door, pow! Right from that wood line across the street. And then over on the side over here where I couldn't see, but I could tell, and it was a female, I could tell just about where she was standing. She was by that shed somewhere. And she said something out loud. And I can't imitate it. But it was like a question. It was like, that one across the street did the wood knock or whatever, however they make that noise. I still don't know if they actually hit wood. But she was like, she said something, and it's gibberish. I couldn't understand what she was saying, but the context of it was like, is she outside? Or is the dog out too, or something like that? Yeah. But it was in a language I couldn't understand. It kind of sounded Taiwan and Native American. I don't know. It was really strange.